Concerns about a wider conflict in the Middle East are mixing with the existing concerns on sticky inflation to create a very difficult stew for investors. What, if anything, might do well in such an uncertain environment? Let's talk about the reflation trade with VanEck CEO of VanEck. I've known you 20 years. You run a commodity trading firm. You've got a huge suite of ETFs for gold and energy and steel and other commodities. The reflation trade's done great this year. You've made a point. Global manufacturing is ticking higher. That's driving the reflation trade. Explain that and explain what's going on with oil.
I think the headlines are really missing the story in commodities, Bob. What happened in the first quarter was really important, which is that global PMI, which is my measure of kind of global economy, went into expansion phase in the first quarter, meaning over 50 is the number. Not only that, that's the first time it's been in expansion since 2002, so for the last 2 years. And it's very strongly growing. That's combined with China manufacturing PMI, also to me a very important economic indicator, positive in March.
So expanding manufacturing is what's driving the commodity trade.
Yes.
Now oil. Explain what's going on in oil.
Well, that's part of it. Copper, oil, the whole metals and energy complex. That's what I mean by commodities. And there's a lot of headlines out of the Middle East, and some of it is obviously driving the prices short term, but I think that's hard as an investor. So what we say is actually now commodities are interesting for investors. Not go crazy, but definitely should have a position.
So manufacturing data is what's investable here, not necessarily
economic trends, macroeconomic trends, even if they're cyclical, and we're in a growth trend. Yeah.
Gold. You've got the big gold. You've got the gold miners. You run the biggest ETFs out there. You said there is a different dynamic driving gold this year. Explain what you mean by this.
Well, it's different from commodities. I call it the 2025 fiscal reckoning in the United States. We are running a huge budget deficit. Actually, I think that's what's driving inflation and our economic growth as much as monetary policy. And I think gold is just going vertical, reflecting investor concerns about 25.
Finally, your VanEck Semiconductor ETF. This is the monster in the space, SMH. You all know this, folks. You've seen big inflows since November here. It's been amazing. But it's moving sideways for the past few months. Even NVIDIA is moving sideways. Is this a pause or a top?
I think it's a pause. I don't think the market can perform without tech, but I think the stocks are a little bit ahead of themselves, but it's hard to say sell because I think they're more permanent growers than cyclical.
Yeah, and no inflows into oil. We're going to talk about that. This is what remarkable. Oil or gold, no inflows. Semiconductors, top E, big inflows here. We have to go. I'm going to have much more on the whole reflation trade and the impact of higher rates on stocks and ETFs. It's coming up on ETF Edge at 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Jan's going to be joined by Mike Agans from ETF Actions. That's etfedge.cnbc.com.